The app we're building has some relatively complex state management needs. First of all, the app has authentication, so we need to always be listening to the user's authentication state. And then we also have a progress report that determines how much progress a user has made on a certain topic of quizzes. And that document is always changing in real time as the user completes more quizzes. In addition, we also have data that's being loaded from the database just to show the content for each quiz. And all this data needs to be used at multiple points in the widget tree, so we need to start thinking about how we're going to manage all this state. I'm going to show you an approach that's very powerful and also very simple using a library called Provider. And I would highly recommend exploring this route first before looking into these other heavy state management libraries like Block or Redux. Those libraries tend to add a lot of complexity that the typical developer or team doesn't need. And the great thing about Provider is it's mostly just syntactic sugar for some of the built-in things that we have in Flutter already, like inherited widget, stream builder, and a few other things. But when it comes to Firebase, it's especially useful for managing your streams, so let's go ahead and take a look at how that works now. First, let's look at how Provider works at a high level. Let's say we have this user model class, which is just an abstract model that determines the shape of our data. In an upcoming video, we're going to build abstract models like this to deserialize data from Firestore to a Dart class that we can use in our code. Now, Provider allows us to create an inherited widget that can be used by its descendants somewhere else in the widget tree, no matter how deeply they're nested below. So if we want to provide data at the global level, we can wrap our material app in a provider, and then we'll give it a generic type of the user model that we just defined. Then its value will be an actual instance of the user model. Now, this should look very familiar to you if you watched the theme video from before. We go down here into the widget that's nested below, and then we can call provider of context, passing in the same generic type. And again, just like a theme, it's going to look up the widget tree to the closest provider for that generic type, and then give us access to it in the widget. And now we can share this data in multiple places, and we only need to instantiate it once. But at this point, we're only sharing data. We also probably want to re-render the widget when this data changes. Provider gives us multiple ways to do this, but the way that's most relevant to us is that if we have our data in the form of a stream, because that's what we'll get with Firebase user authentication and also the Firestore database. So what I'm doing is creating a variable called stream, which is just a stream of the user model instance. And then I'm going to go down here and change our provider to a stream provider. Then instead of providing a value, we'll provide the stream that we just defined. This is going to give us access to the value in the stream as if it were a synchronous value in the descendant widgets. That's because it's subscribing to the stream when we define it here in the stream provider. And it's actually doing this by combining inherited widget and stream builder under the hood. So it's also managing the subscription to that stream, so we don't need to close it manually. And now whenever the value of the stream changes, all of the widgets that depend on this value that are calling it from the provider of context will have the widget re-render when the value changes. So overall, this is pretty similar to a stream builder, but the benefits are that we can share this value between multiple widgets, and we only have to define and manage that stream once. So if you need to share a stream globally, this can be very powerful. At this point, I think we've talked enough about the building blocks in Flutter, and we can go ahead and start building out our app in the next section.